Welcome to the Esoteric Alchemy Podcast, a space where we explore the deeper layers of the human experience. I'm your host, Ben Figueiredo, an alchemist, healer, and guide. Join me and my guests to the fringes of science and magic, the depths of the inner world. We'll explore topics related to spirituality, philosophy, sacred geometry, the occult, and more, with the aim of gaining deeper understanding of the reality of the self. Well, John and Amy, thank you for coming on to the show. I'm so excited to have you. For those who don't know you, John and Amy are from the Human Design Collective. They teach human design, and I had the privilege of being taught by them through Rave ABCs and Rave Cartography. And I look forward to continuing my education later on with them, because they're just amazing teachers, and I really love how you guys approach this knowledge in a very practical way, in a very grounded way. You know, you really allowed your students to just join into the experiment, and it wasn't like, you know, this is the way that you got to do it and this is the only way. It's just like, you know, that's obviously not what human design teaches at all. It's all about our own inner authority and what makes sense for you, and how are you going to approach this as a unique individual. So I guess let's start off. We don't need to get too deep into this, because I'm sure you have so much other resources for your own personal backgrounds. But maybe, how long have you guys been in human design? I know you've been in it for a long time.
Well, thanks, Ben. We've loved having you in class, and thanks for having us. I found human design in 2009, so I guess it's been about 16 years. It was the same year my daughter was born, so I always know how long I've been in human design, because it's however old she is, so she's almost 17. Yeah, and I found it in just the nick of time. I was just thinking about how often I hear people say, oh, I wish I'd found this earlier, or I wish I'd had this when I was a child, and I understand that, and I've had times that I felt that way, and at the same time, I feel like I found it just at the right time, right exactly when I really needed it.
Yeah. How about you, John?
It was early 2015 for me, so about 10 years now. And I had come into human design through astrology. It was actually an astrologer friend of mine who introduced me to it and kind of dropped it in my lap. It was a fellow projector, and she just kind of threw the system over my chart, sent it all to me in an email, and said, "Check this out." And I think I've said this before, but my first impression of it, when I saw the body graph and the wheel and the I Ching, I was just almost in disbelief. Just thinking like, wow, is this such a thing exist? Like this could actually work. Someone's put this thing together. I had a little bit of a resistance to it in the beginning, just because I wasn't ready to dive into another system at that time. And yet there was something about learning that I was a projector and just going a little bit deeper that grabbed me. And then next thing I know, I'm getting a foundation reading, and I'm taking Living Your Design. And 10 years later, it's become quite a fixture in my life.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love everybody's story with human design is so different, which is a testament to, you know, the system and how it shows us that we're all different and unique, and our stories are so different. So I think the main topic of this podcast that I really want to focus on is just the overarching cycles that we go through. Because I think that a lot of people, when they come to human design, they don't even realize how connected it really is to what's happening in the universe at large. You know, we're always so focused on our own individual body graph, which is important, but we don't realize then like how connected our own individual body graph is connected to these larger cycles that are happening as the planets move, right? They're continually influencing us. And then even on top of that, we have these what we call global cycles in human design. And, you know, the next big shift of this global cycle is happening in 2027. So would you guys maybe just share what you see is coming in 2027? What changes do you see happening already? What's the basic teaching that human design gives on what's coming in 2027?
Hmm. Yeah, I could definitely, I'm sure we could both say a lot about it, but I think the point that you made in the beginning is a really, really big one to not skip over, which is that what I see with astrological systems and what I've seen in myself and what I think tends to happen is there's this oscillation between this sense that everything's happening in me. It's like, it's all about my chart and my history and my conditioning and my definition and my strategy and authority and then my world and what's good or bad or challenging or easy. And it can feel like it's very self-focused. And on that end of things, it means I think sometimes we can miss that not everything that's happening is just happening in here. Part of it is an experience of the ocean we're swimming in. And then you can see that sometimes when we really get into studying the systems, we can almost swing over to the other side where everything is like the conditioning field and the transits of the day and where's the moon and where is the sun and what is Pluto doing and everything's happening to me based on the transit field. So I think what I've discovered about it over time that's been really valuable and as a constant exploration is that relating to ourselves and to the transits, I think, is like any relationship. And whether we're looking at conditioning that's coming from our partner or our history or our workplace, or whether we're looking at influences that are coming through the major cycles or the transit field, it's all relational. And then there's a lot to explore about how do I stand in relation to my partner, my child, my history, the transit field, the global cycles, the collective consciousness. So it's a really fascinating exploration all around. And I'll often see it in talking with people that sometimes people are having a really hard time and they're taking it really personally. Like they're feeling like, I must be doing something wrong. And what else could I be doing better? And did I not follow my strategy and authority? And is this why everything feels so bad? And sometimes I want to say to people, hey, no, it's okay. Everybody's getting pummeled with this right now. Like this is just the air we're all breathing right now. It's not your fault. It's not entirely in your control. And then we can also see the other side where sometimes it's about finding out that we could actually have more internal consciousness or a shift in our own perspective or attitude that would help in the situation. So I think that's why, to your point that you said initially, I think that's why we try to be really open and relational and experiential, because we don't always know, where is somebody in this journey and in this relationship with their chart, with their history, with the global cycles. So I just wanted to highlight that point because I think those are really important points that you made that shouldn't be glossed over. It's a big deal to develop an autonomous relationship with all of those things.
The relationship piece is kind of key to me. The key for me these days, really in pretty much every aspect of human design, because I'm looking at our relationship with the map itself, like how are we holding it, how are we filtering our perception through it, whether we're picking up human design body graph or an astrological chart or some other system. And so I think there's an inherent relationship there that's often kind of fast forwarded or skipped over. And then there's the relationship that Amy's talking about, like the relationship with the cosmic influences, the planetary influences, the relationship with people in our lives, that we're either sharing space with or an aura with. And so that relationship theme just seems to be what's really coming up a lot these days, both on an individual level, on a interpersonal or relationship level with others. And then we're all going through this big portal or this big transition point that I think we can see both through a lot of shifting planetary influences and through this background frequency that human design talks about, the global background frequency of moving from process planning to sleeping phoenix. And I think it's helpful sometimes to step back and zoom out, and then maybe ask ourselves the question of like, okay, is this just me? Is this my experience right now? Are other people having this experience? How much of this is passing? How much of this is just energy moving through? How much of this is my stuff that I've got to work with and bring up? And so it's a pretty rich and deep, exploration when we start going down these roads and looking at these systems this way and working with something like human design.
Yeah. That there is a lot to contemplate and feel. And that reminds me of like, I think even, just this past couple weeks have been very difficult. I've been feeling a very heavy energy. And I know I'm moving through a lot of my own just in my personal life, with having kind of just finalizing divorce and, trying to figure out, even though I shouldn't be trying to figure out anything, uh, is like, just coming face to face with the fact that my life right now is kind of like this blank slate and I have no idea. I'm kind of leaping into this unknown, right? And so it's kind of scary, especially for my mind. My mind wants to try to grasp at something and to hold on to. But anyway, I've been feeling this really intense heaviness, and I kind of just got this realization that we're almost, in a sense, as a collective, as a species on the planet, we're kind of, as we transition this period, that we're kind of going through a death in a way. Like we're going through a death of this old way that that's all we've ever known for 400 years. So like going back 4 or 5 generations, it's in our DNA, it's in our blood, this specific frequency, this specific way of living with the cross of planning, and going into something that's almost the exact opposite. And so, for me, it was like, oh, wow, we're kind of experiencing this death together. And I think most people don't even realize, what it is that they're feeling. Would you guys kind of agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're naming those themes right there, and we see it in the keynotes just of the 2 crosses. During the cross of planning, the conditioning force on the entire collective, on the entire planet, the major conditioning force was, let's have a plan. Let's come up with a plan. What's the plan? What's the bargain? What's the agreement? What's needed? How are we going to organize it? What are we planning? And then how are we executing the plan? And what does everybody need to do to be part of the plan? And now if we look at what's the cross the sleeping phoenix, it's, wake up and die and then be reborn. So wake up, die. I mean, I that was so profound to me the first time I heard Ross say that. It's not the cross of the phoenix. It's the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which means you get woken up and then you die, which means you're not going through an unconscious death. You're going through a very vivid kind of death and then a rebirth process. And it reminds me a lot, like I think what I've been experiencing, what I can see in people around me, it feels very much to me like childbirth. And I don't know if most women would relate. I imagine a lot of them would, and probably you guys have seen it. But they're in that process, in the active process of giving birth, there are those moments, I certainly had those moments where I thought, I can't do this. Like, I want out. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get through that. I don't know how my body's going to get through this. I don't know what's on the other side of it. Something is dying. Something's being opened in a way that feels like this doesn't seem okay, and yet it's what's happening. And then on the other side of it, who you were before that, it just doesn't exist anymore. It's something new has come into being. And I see it in myself, and I see it in a lot of people exactly what you're saying. I think it's that feeling of, I can't even count the number of people that I've heard say, I don't know exactly what's coming. I don't know how to plan for the future. I don't know quite what to focus on. I don't know where to build or lay down a foundation for something. It's like being out at sea and trying to figure out how to build a house on the ocean. It's a really strange experience, I think, and it's probably even bigger, even though we know all this stuff and we talk about all of this stuff in terms of human design and global cycles. I think it's still probably a continual process of waking up over and over again to how big it is and what a huge change it really is.
Yeah.
It is. It's intense. It really is. It's intense on a collective level. It's intense on a personal level. And for me, like we were talking about earlier, part of the thing I've been working with is how much of this is mine, how much of this is part of my personal process, how much do I take ownership of, how much is it just the sea I'm swimming in? And it's hard to tell sometimes. Like I'm doing Pluto Sun right now. I've got Pluto going over my natal sun, so gate 41. As Pluto's been going back and forth from 60 to 41, it's kind of dipped in there and it's gone back to 60, and it's heading back into 41 for the stretch. And so I'm about maybe almost halfway through it, and at the same time, we've got the United States finishing up, or it's just completed its Pluto return, and so there's obviously some big stuff going on in this country, and a kind of death and ending, and hopefully something, arises out of the ashes, something better, is what I'm counting on.
Right.
And so, right. And it's a lot. It really, so it's hitting on every level. And I think, your point about a rebirth of sorts happening. I think we see that in the keynotes and the symbolism. 41 is the beginning of it's the beginning of the wheel, the Rave Mandala, the beginning of the human experiential way. Pluto usually comes in and is like kind of like the final word on things. It's like it's going to strip everything down, get things down to its essence. And if things are not in alignment with truth, or, the kind of the fundamental, I guess, essence of reality of what's going on, it tends to be set aside or destroyed in the process. And I think we're all going through that, individually and collectively.
Yeah, that's a good point. And if I remember right, Pluto was in gate 41 in 1615, right? When the cross of planning started? Or was it? I thought I remember Ross saying something about that, like or maybe it was 1781. There's so many dates. But I'm trying to write, there was something with like it Pluto re-entering into 41, which is related to the start codon, right, in our gene. That really starts the new process.
Yeah, it would have been the late 1700s.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, because of Pluto. We're having the Pluto return. Yeah,
We're having
so it would have been the
Pluto
17th.
return. Yeah. That's so fascinating. So, I mean, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's obviously so many things we could get into with, all the fine details and how it works. But I love where the conversation's going, just on how what really matters is how each individual and how collectively we're going through this and how we're feeling it. And Amy, to your point, just like we can think about all these things, we can study them, we could map it all out. But in the end, if we're following our strategy and authority, we're just going to be watching it happen anyway. Right. And it's not like any of this knowledge is going to change anything about what happens. It just changes our own awareness. So maybe we don't get lost in it. How are you guys approaching what you're feeling? I know, John, you talked about, just being aware of the energy and how it's going, but would you have any advice for people if they're feeling it and they're not sure how to navigate it? They're not, really, they're feeling kind of lost in this big change that's coming, because I personally see so many people struggling right now, or even wanting to pull back and not really understanding why, because it's like, we have this cultural conditioning of the 3740, which is you self-sacrifice for the tribe, right? You give your time, and a lot of people, so many people now I hear more and more conversations of like, I just really needed to take time for myself. I needed to rest. I didn't want to go to that event. I didn't want to commit or whatever. But then there's like this underlying guilt about it, right? Like there's a guilt of like, oh, I need to also take care of myself, not just the tribe. So I guess how are you guys navigating that and like still keeping healthy relationships and still also balancing that with your own needs?
Well, first, I think I would say the if we think about the 40-37, and that has been a huge part of the conditioning force that we've all been under, then it's almost like everyone's getting this infusion of the bargain is the way. And a lot of those bargains are unspoken. If you look at the chart with just the four gates of the cross of planning, it looks like an emotional projector with an open throat. So a lot of the bargains I think that we've been experiencing have been uh, us sensing into each other. It's like what it's like to get dropped into a family, which happens to all of us when we're born, where and it is like a projector. It's like you're looking around trying to figure out what are the rules and what's okay and what's not okay, and you sort of pick it up and you figure it out and you participate in the agreement, even though a lot of it is not necessarily very conscious or very explicit. So I think part of what's starting to happen now is we're shifting into this era where it becomes the chart of a manifesting generator. It becomes a chart of a 3420. It becomes a chart where there's power going straight to the throat, and that becomes a huge conditioning force, which I think we should talk more about, what it's like to be under the conditioning force of the 40-37 versus the 34-20. So it's a channel of charisma and it's a channel of action. And what do we know about any time we've got a motor connected to the throat in the body graph? We know that puts tremendous emphasis on really good, clear communication. So now I think it creates a backdrop where we don't have a template. We don't have as much of a template for what a normal good bargain is that we can all just sort of soak up and adapt to. Now it's sort of like everybody's got their own thing. I need to be alone. You're having a gathering. No, I'm having a gathering. No, I need to rest. No, I need to feed my body, but my body wants this and your body wants that. There's a lot of self-orientation. So then to your question, if we're going to be in relationship, if we're going to relate to each other, I think it requires a lot more communication and clarity, which means first, you have to be enough in touch with yourself to know what's going on with you, what's right for you, what are you okay with, what are you not okay with, what do you need, what do you not need. You've got to be responsible for yourself in that way, and then communicate that to somebody else, and then find out if you're able to relate or how you're able to relate, given all of that. But I think part of this big shift makes it so that things will go more easily if we all get more conscious and skillful in how we communicate with each other. And it kind of brings to the surface, I think, whatever our hidden or unconscious or unacknowledged expectations, unspoken agreements have been. It's almost like it's pulling all of that up to the surface, and then we've kind of got to look at it and work it out with each other, because we can't rely on so many of the things that we could in the earlier parts of the cross of planning, which is like, oh, you're a man and I'm a woman, so I know what that means. Christian and you're a Muslim, so we know what that means. Or, you're an American and, you're an Australian, so we've got some notion of what those things mean. We don't really know what any of those things mean anymore. And I think most people are not identifying with those things quite as much anymore. So it puts a lot more emphasis on consciousness and communication, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant. Well said, Pat.
So, yeah. So I mean, to your question, how, for me personally, then, I feel like I'm going through my own process of deeper and deeper levels of clarity and ownership and skill building, to be um, as healed and as present and as conscious as I can be, and then to work out whatever I need to work out with the people around me. And it definitely takes some attention, you know?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the first things to just note or to sit with is like, okay, there's something big is going down, and everyone's in a way got their own orientation to it, and everyone's probably going to negotiate it or navigate it in their own way according to their design or what their path or what they're here for. I'm seeing certain people who are like into, let's say, I don't know, personal growth, inner work, living kind of a more psychodynamic life, interested in things like human design, that are really on the front lines of it. We're asking questions, we're looking at things. I think other fields are probably experiencing something similar, but certainly in the world of human design, astrology, metaphysics, there are a lot of people who are very aware of some of these patterns and the things that are going on, and making on some level a decision to approach it consciously or to meet it a certain way. And then there's a part of the population which doesn't seem to have it on the radar at all, which I find really fascinating sometimes, is talking to people, extended family or other people that I know or people I run into, out in the professional world, where you can have some of these conversations with them and they really don't know what you're talking about. They don't have a point of reference for it. And so there almost seems like there's kind of a splitting in a way. There's certain people who are going down one road, certain people who are going down another road. I would put myself in the former camp of like, yeah, I think about this stuff a lot, and Amy and I talk about it a lot, and we feel it. And I feel like that's a pretty tough place to be because we're figuring it out as we go. Things are changing. Like we were talking about earlier, the background frequency is changing. So a lot of the assumptions that we were operating on, the points of reference that we had before, they're just not holding up. They're not serving the same, purpose. They're not working in the same way. And so I think one of the big things that we probably all can do is to slow down a bit, like to stop, slow down, to take inventory. And like Amy's saying, I think we got to get straight with ourselves first, like figure out, where am I, what's going on, what's my reality, what's my truth, and to deal with it. And if we're suppressing things or avoidance or brushing things under the rug, that may work for some people, but from what I've seen in my own life, there's like a pretty quick, instant feedback karma loop or something. It's like I find more and more that I've got to be in my own truth, in my own frequency, and it seems like the threshold for not doing that is getting smaller. Or it's like there's and it's not just me, it's a lot of people that I see. Or it's like once you start kind of coming into alignment, or you realize what your needs are or what's working for you and not working for you, it becomes harder and harder to continue compromising that. And I don't think we should. But then it sets up this other question that you're asking of like, all right, well, how do we relate in this new world? How do we, we're moving into a time of individuality and individualism. And, we've got a lot of individual frequencies coming in and a lot of collective and tribal frequencies fading away. And just that alone is a big shift. And yet we're here together on this planet. I don't think we're all meant to go out alone or be in total isolation. We have relational needs, social needs. We do need support. We do need community. Family is really nice. And yet it's not working like it used to. And so yeah, slowing down and just kind of, watching, paying attention, looking, seeing, that's a good starting point, I think. And then each individual can hopefully find out, well, what's the next step? What's it look like? How do I move forward? And something like strategy and authority, I think serves that purpose. It's not so much that strategy and authority is telling us what to do but it's giving us something to work with in this process to where we can go, well, wait a second, let me slow down and see if I'm actually feeling energetically connected to what's going on, or am I feeling a sense of recognition in this? Am I clear? Am I settled? There's a lot of things that strategy and authority, I think, brings up that gives us a way of taking inventory or having points of reference in our experience that maybe in the past we would just offload to some external source or authority.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, there was a lot in there.
Sorry.
No, that was good. No, that was really good. I just had so much going through my mind, and then I was like, oh, now I forgot it. Are you guys, are either of you right-minded? Well, okay, you are. You're left.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm left-minded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I'm right.
Yeah.
That's my only right variable. So I'm really learning to work with that and really what that means.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I wanted to start a podcast, because I found it very difficult to talk about things like just on short clips on social media or whatever, because it was like I have all these things floating around in my head, but when I go to do it, I feel like it just doesn't come out, and I'm like, what the heck? So I'm like, oh, maybe I should do it. And when I do it, it ends up still being like 20 minutes long, because I'm just rambling all this stuff that's coming out. I'm like, Instagram wants me to limit it to 3 minutes. I'm like, this is impossible.
Not made for projectors.
Yeah, not made for projectors, for sure. Yeah, but back to that. Shoot, I had one thought that, I guess, on the piece of like relationships, and one thing I actually had in my notes that I wanted to bring up, because one thing I see, and even in my own life, now that I'm divorced and looking back and trying to, my 64 47 is trying to make sense of the past and all the mistakes that I made, and what are the things that led me here, especially as like a third line, trying to reconcile, like, okay, there are no mistakes, right? Only discoveries. But even in how we move forward with relating, and what I'm seeing a lot of in the world rising up, almost, there is this splitting of timelines. And I know there's a lot of other spiritual ideas out there that talk about an actual splitting of like timelines, where what you were talking about, John, the people who aren't aware, we could call them NPCs if we wanted to be rude, where it's, it's just like, it's two different things happening, I think. But I see that duality playing out a lot, even in, there's so much, like with the rise of more of polyamory, let's say, coming to be more mainstream with, public figures like Aubrey Marcus, and bringing, this out, and then getting a lot of controversy and pushback from other people rising up and say, no, it's all about divine unity, and like, in order to, achieve union with God or whatever, like, this is the only way, and so then it becomes so polarized. And that's interesting. I actually had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine who was like, who noticed this in American politics, and I didn't even make the connection, but he was like, it's almost like the right, the Republicans, they're all about, the family, community, this tribal aspect of relating in a certain way. And then the left is all about freedom. It's all really about like, we're going to do everything, the way we want to do it. We don't want anybody telling us what to do. I want to be, this pure expression of an individual, like, whatever gender I want to be, whatever, I want to identify as. And you have these two, like, polar opposites kind of, playing out in politics as well. And it reminded me of this idea that in this esoteric tradition of Rosicrucianism, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but they have this idea that, as souls at this time on the planet, we're actually here to learn how to be beings of love and freedom, and to reconcile those two things. And when you really start to think about, really contemplate on the idea of those two words, love. What is love? If we think of, even how we talk about or love in human design being like a magnet, right? It's an attraction force. It's something that pulls us in, connects us together. A lot of spiritual traditions talk about love being, kind of the connective tissue of the universe. It's what makes us all one, right? It's what pulls us all together into unity. But then we have this idea of freedom, which is, I want to be separate. I want to be free. I want to not have to, conform or be conditioned by or be homogenized. And I want to be an individual. I want to be expressive. And I think, this whole conversation has really, really touched on this idea of what does it really mean to be beings of love and freedom, and how do we reconcile the two to express them both fully at the same time, so where we're fully loving, we're fully, integrated, but also fully differentiated, and I think that,
Yeah.
that one of the things I see, in you guys and what you teach and how you express, what does that look like in your relationship, as two projectors that are fully studying and experimenting with human design and being your own differentiated selves, but yet choosing to come together in a relationship to work together. Yeah. How do you
Mhm.
guys see that and embody that in your own relationship?
There's something in what you're saying that's reminding me of the description of Gate 34, Power of the Great, that says power is only truly good or great when its display or use is for the common good.
Yeah.
And there's something about that that's so fascinating to me, because that gate is the root of, we could say, pure and total self-empowerment. You could almost call it the most self-absorbed gate of the entire body graph, potentially. And yet to be that empowered in oneself is also linked to this concept of, and that power and the expression of it serves a common good. And so when you're talking about love and freedom, I think actually part of the opportunity that might be happening now with this shift, even though it's uncomfortable and it's new and we're all working our way through it, is I think it could be an opening to have more opportunities and more room to experience different ways of being both loving and free. And in some ways, it almost seems like we have to be free. We have to both be free in order to be truly loving. Otherwise, we're in an obligation or a bargain of self-sacrifice. You sacrifice this for me, I sacrifice this for you. We're both, for the people that that's correct for, that can feel like, okay, we can work it out. We can work out an agreement about that. But for a lot of people, it can potentially feel like it's a it's a um, it's a bargain of sort of mutual half misery, and we're both going to suffer, and we just got to make sure we're suffering equally. And so this new potential, I think, is that if I love and honor and respect myself, and I know myself enough to know what's true for me, how could I not extend that consideration to you? That for you to know what is good and right and true for you has to be equally considered, has to be of equal value. And then we see, I think you can also see it right away in the difference between the 3740 as the basis of relationship versus the 5559, which is we don't make a bargain that we're not discussing. I think it's a potential to recognize you have your individuality, I have mine. Can those truths coexist or not? And it's because it's not as you can't really compromise that. What's true is true.
Yeah.
So it's not so much about, hey, suppress this part of your truth and I'll suppress this part of mine and we'll get through the day. And I think it takes a different kind of confrontation in a way that's like, wow, if I want access, the freedom to know and express my full truth, how can I not extend that to you? And then we put the truths on the table, and now we got to get creative and see if we can do something with it or not. I've always seen it, and I see it in our relationship, and we've got to work through it just like everybody else. We get some truths on the table. We lay them all out. Your truth, my truth, the kid's truth, the parents' truth. Everybody's the reality of everyone and their limitations and their capacities and their what they're okay with and what they're not. And now, what do we do with it? So I think we're constantly working on how to be a team, but how to be an empowered team.
Yeah.
And then creativity, I think, is actually accessible. It's not always easy, but sometimes it feels like it'd be easier if we could just, what's the template? Somebody tell us, like, what are we supposed to do in this situation? What's okay? What'll make this good? But I think that's part of the self-responsibility that this new era is really bringing in. And if we're up for that, then I think we'll see a lot of different kinds of relationships and a lot of different kinds of circumstances that people work out together. Or not.
Or not.
Yeah. Or not. Or just, no, I'm not doing it at all,
Yeah.
I was thinking, Amy, sounds like what you're describing is what is sometimes referred to as enlightened self-interest.
That's what we're always saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it, relationally, I think it's like I think a relationship, if it's going to be successful and if two people choose to be together and it's something that they're going to sustain for some length of time, it's probably going to work better if each person is empowered as an individual within themselves. They have a sense of what they're about, have a degree of self-responsibility, self-awareness, and then you bring that into a partnership dynamic or a collaboration. And there's still a lot to work out, but you're off to a pretty good start rather than, I think, what a lot of us have been doing over the years. And maybe that was just the conditioning and the potential of the times. But, I think, the cross of planning, the 40-37 can encourage a different type of dependency. We're offloading things to the other person. And I think that's part of what seems to be shifting, where it's kind of falling apart. And the other piece I was thinking about bringing in, but I want to make sure that, I don't go on too long this time. But I feel like in a way the Maya is kind of breaking down. The part of this whole thing that's really got us measuring the this and that. It's the polarities that you're describing. It's the either or, and I feel like that's part of the shift, is like we're seeing beyond the Maya. It's starting to kind of fray and unravel a bit. And you combine that with what we were talking about earlier with Pluto bringing, surfacing truth and the essence of things. And to me, that seems kind of like the direction is like, we're going to have to figure this out. It is a new human experiential process that we're going to have to learn, grow, and develop through and mature through. But we're at the very, very beginnings, if we're even out of the birth canal. Different people have different takes on that. But I feel like, that's a lot of what we're seeing. And the last thing I'll say, just on a personal experience, relational level, is having a knowledge of the mechanics doesn't change the mechanics. The mechanics are the mechanics, and we can say we mastered them, or we know all about them, and we know every keynote, and we know what the Ravi Ching says, and you still got to live with it. There's a reality there that is just not going anywhere, no matter how much you know about human design. So that actually puts a different burden on the individual. Like, we just can't try to address it through the mind. We've got to try to address it through our being, through our actions, through our reactions, through our feelings, through whatever process that we have as an individual. So that's what comes up for me.
Yeah. That's great. I think, going back to, just relating and kind of bringing in my own experience with, my marriage, my past relationship, and realizing, I think that overall, when I look back, I'm like, okay, yeah, it couldn't have happened any other way because that's the way that it happened, right? And it was also a lesson for both of us, I think. Even if we look at the mechanics and we take it that way, I have the 34, she has the 10, right? It's this channel of exploration and empowering the self. And if we really were to examine our relationship where we were both lost in, like, we didn't have self-love. We didn't have, this real rooted sense of who we are. We were both looking for that in the other person. And I think that through this relationship, and then, in the last couple of years, human design kind of helped us to even more, of the budding of our individuality, of our differentiation, that this relationship really it acted as like a mirror to be like, hey, this is who you are. This is who you are. And then realizing as we grew into that, it was like, oh, like our true selves, like, wouldn't have gotten together. But that's okay because, we got to get our not selves, if we want to say it that way, our not selves got together to help us see and find our true selves, and grow that way. And now that we are more differentiated, we can say, okay, I don't think that this is for us anymore. I think that we're done with this relationship. And now coming to terms with that and like going through the process is not as simple as that, right? There's still a lot of emotional and biological and, deconditioning that has to happen. And that has been an incredibly difficult process for me, realizing, just how much as a projector I've absorbed, and really becoming more aware of that. But that's also been a good lesson too, to really become familiar with how my own aura works. But yeah, it is as we approach relationships, it has to be from, like, we really do need to be fully embodied in our own individuality, our own alignment to our true self, so that we can show up as ourselves. Because I feel like, I'll speak from my own experience, is that I got so lost in the other, and eventually I became not happy because, like, I don't even know who I am anymore. This isn't what I want. I'm not even, I don't want to say allowed, but I'm not being myself. And so who am I? And what do you really want? Like, do you want me, or do you just want you? And you want me to be homogenized into this because, you're trying to change me, or I'm trying to change you, or whatever the dynamic is. So yeah, I think, you guys are absolutely spot on of saying, yeah, we have to be approaching that individuality. And I think you can't really love someone else for who they are, right? If you're not allowing them to be them, you're just loving the idea of whatever it is that you have, and projecting that onto them, or, yeah. So,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know what the question is in there, but yeah.
Well, I think what you're naming is something that maybe we're all getting to learn about on a deeper level. And maybe for some people this comes more naturally, but even if we think about the description of the 3740 as a part seeking a whole,
Mm,
I think a lot of those concepts of what marriage was supposed to be, or even what community or family is supposed to be, has that more merged undertone to it. That I'm a part seeking a whole, meaning the focus is on some version of you complete me, some version of, you're my other half, you're my better half. And I think in some ways that can work naturally for some people to a certain extent. Some people are more built for that. And then if we look at the 3740 being this big influence, maybe that made that more of the template for, I mean, usually I think with the global cycles, it becomes the thing that gets conditioned as the norm. So the 3740 was the conditioning norm, which is be part of a whole. So you're not complete by yourself. You're not complete unless you're part of a whole, a part of a marriage, part of a family, part of a community. And for me, having a lot of individuality in myself from a very young age, I remember being like 18 years old and having a conversation with someone I was in relationship with. And he was talking in that way, in that sort of like, oh, we complete each other, or we can be. It was like a merging quality to it. And I certainly have, with my openness, a lot of codependence I can go into for sure. But as he was talking about this, I kept just seeing like rings intertwined rather than becoming part of one ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That each
Yeah.
person is like their own whole, and we can touch, we can touch points, we can come together, we can even intertwine a bit, but it's not that merged. And I think part of what has come to the surface now, which may be because as that frequency is going away, it becomes less tolerable for people who don't carry that innately. And so then what a lot of, I think, couples therapists, I know a lot of couples therapists, and what a lot of them, I think a lot of the roots of couples therapy will say, you can't actually have real connection if you're merged. There's nothing to connect with.
Right.
You're already part of one thing. There isn't a possibility for connection. There's just the experience of being merged. And then we start to miss ourselves. I think we start to feel like I'm not connected with myself. So then we got to go connect with ourselves. And most good couples therapists will encourage unmerging and healthy differentiation, so you can actually see, can we connect? If so, how? And in what way? And how will that happen? And I think when you go through a divorce, one of the things I've learned about it is there's a lot of stages to it. It goes on for a long time. It's not like you get divorced and now maybe for some people it is. It hasn't, that's not the way I've seen it. And especially if you have kids, you've got touch points for the rest of your life or the rest of their lives, and it'll ebb and flow, and it will come together and come apart. And you have those genetic bonds that you created together. So it'll keep evolving. And so, yeah, we differentiate and then we find out how we can connect. In the merging, there's no connection is possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. And if you look at it it makes sense when you look at it from the point of, say, sacred geometry, or going back to, the source of everything. If everything was, just one thing at one point, it eventually wanted to expand and know itself, but it couldn't do that. The universe had to become a duality in order to look back at itself and say like, oh, that's what I am. Oh, that's what I am. How I think of it is that we are each an experience. We're like the universe experiencing itself, right? This like nodal point in the universe. And so I'm here as experiencing what it's like to be Ben. And then you're experiencing what it's like to be Amy. You're experiencing what it's like to be John. And the only thing I can do is experience the experience of John through, John, but it's not like I will never experience what it's like to be John Cole, but, that's for you and your, unique experience that way. So we're all just experiencing each other through our own experience. a lot of experience there, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that point that you're making is very important. It's an important attitude to hold in relationship. And it's something that's easy for a lot of us to forget in moments of pressure or stress or frustration or confusion. But just that very simple attitude you just named is like, you're an aspect of the universe that I will never fully know or understand.
Yeah.
Not completely. And I'll never know what that's entirely like to be you and experience the way that you do. And if I have some remembering and some respect for that, I think I'll probably treat you with more respect.
Yeah. Yeah. What is it? The divine in me sees the divine in you, right? Namaste. Yeah. Honoring people that way. Coming into that, that dance, that divine dance of, the experience, which I think is so important as well.
And to have it be real and not a display. Because I think that's the funny point we're in right now, because the conditioning force of the 3420 puts everyone under pressure to display power, even if they don't feel it or actually have it.
Yeah.
It puts pressure on everyone to be charismatic as the template of what's the new norm. And so to have those orientations and those spiritual truths, those very core spiritual teachings, which are generally universally true, um, to not just be doing the display of those things, but to have it actually be substantive and grounded and real, if that's what's actually going on. You can't perform that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, but it's
Yeah.
probably not,
It's inauthentic.
it's not going to be as substantive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not going to be, there's no real substance there. There's no real connection, because then again, you're not being yourself, right? You're not really actually showing up as yourself in relationship or, connection with the other. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I am blanking on where to go next. I mean, I had so many other ideas, but I love, how it kind of just naturally focused on relationships and like, how do we connect? Because I think, when we think about it, that's really the most important thing, right? Is we're all here together on this planet. We're all trying to find out who we are, what we're doing here, and we have to deal with each other.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah,
And yeah,
yep,
yeah. So I think going
yeah.
into the future, navigating that, obviously finding out what our own inner authority is and how to navigate and stay true to ourselves, but also let the other stay true to themselves, I think is something that is very important, but it's very, very difficult. Even in like, I had an instance this morning that really I had to stop and breathe because like I was getting my kids breakfast for, getting them out to school and stuff. And I was like, okay, I had this for breakfast ready, made it. And then both of my kids are taste cognition, or determination. And, one's open, one's closed, and it's like, oh, this doesn't taste good. And I'm like, I'm like, I was like, okay, I'm not going to get mad. I'm not going to get frustrated. I don't have anything else for you to eat. What would you like? What sounds good? Because I was like, in the past, I would just be like, oh, I don't know, just eat it, like deal with it, But now I'm like, I'm really trying to honor their individuality and knowing how important it is to nurture their brain system and, really, from that point of view of really allowing them to individuate and grow up, and have more of an advantage than I did. So they don't have to do as much, deconditioning and they can be more in alignment with themselves. But it is hard. It is very hard when you're in a unit and you're like, I've already prepared this. Now I have to, now we're going to be taking more time and be like, and so, yeah, that relationship component, there is an inconvenience to it, right? That we also have to be willing to, again, when we're allowing, I think, the other person to be themselves, there's a lot of give and take there. And I think a lot of the times when we don't want to do that, it's out of selfish reasons, probably most of the time, it's like, well, you're inconveniencing me, or that's not what I would do, or just deal with it, And a lot of it's probably conditioning from my own childhood of, being told the same thing.
Mm. Yeah, but I think there's something really interesting in that, because then we can also see how it's it's much more difficult for individuality to coordinate
Yeah.
in a with a plan. It's like when you got the ability to negotiate, it's easier. And so even as a parent, if there are times when maybe you don't have anything else and it's like, sorry, honey, this is what we've got. I know I I think at least benefit with knowing about this is that even if you can't support it perfectly for them all the time, you can acknowledge it. And and so instead of like, just eat it, it's what we're eating, to be able as a parent to say, I know you don't like the taste of this and that's important to you. And this is what we have today. So let's make do today and we'll try to do better tomorrow. It's like,
Right.
I think even that can be a very different experience for a child being parented than the other way.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so yeah,
Yeah, good
it's,
point.
it's a good thing. Yeah. Yeah, and just I think the last thing I wanted to say, because when you were mentioning about the taste, it was reminding me of what you were saying about how
Mm.
knowing the design, the mechanics doesn't necessarily make it any easier to deal with.
Yeah.
To your point about relationships, I think for anybody, and especially now, going to the holidays and the new year, and I think it's a really good idea to remember that this is all happening right now. And a lot of people are likely sensitive to it. And so if you're struggling in relationship, if you don't feel super stable or clear, to go easy on yourself. And like John said, probably slow down. Don't don't be trying to like thrash around and figure everything out. Just do your best to stay present, stay relaxed, take care of your body, pay attention to what's around you, and go easy on yourself, go easy on other people in relationship, because it's a challenging time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can help each other out that way, I think.
Yeah. Well, John, anything else? Anything, any last?
Yeah. Well, there was something that came up that I think has been on my radar, or something I've been noticing, that I can at least see the patterns in terms of like the global cycles and some of the transits going on. And I think it ties into some of the things that we're talking about right now. But it feels like more and more we're being forced into the present, where in the past it was more optional. And you can look at it like in the past, it was possible to make plans for the last 400 years, right? And plans don't seem to be working like they used to anymore. Is that the cross of planning going away, the cross of sleeping Phoenix coming in with the gate 20? We've had Uranus in gate 20. There's a lot of things I think that are kind of pushing us into the now. And in a way, it's great because that's where it's happening. That's where it's at. Everything is kind of, life happens in the now. Decisions happen more or less in the moment, but we're losing points of reference that way as well, where, we look back on like what happened. Well, it's gone, it's no longer with us. We may carry a memory of it, or we may carry some energy or conditioning in our body, but the event it's not here anymore. It's something that we've left behind, and yet the future isn't here either. And so a lot of this sounds like kind of spiritual cliches, but now I think, for better or for worse, it's not as optional. It's like, everything is happening in the now, and that can be both empowering, in the moment, to be fully present, or to have the lights turned on and to be, standing on the ground in your body and in the present moment. But if we're used to operating outside of that, or we're looking for points of reference in the past or future, it's tough. And, you kind of think about all like strategy and authority, and even the emotional process. If you have an emotionally defined authority, some of the guidance there is, to know that how you feel right now, no matter how intense it is, how overwhelming it might be, it's, this is just how you feel right now. And tomorrow is a new now, and next week is another now. Right. And so, if we're listening to our sacral response, again, that's happening in the now. If we're listening to our spleen, that's happening in the now. And yet it's not as easy as it sounds, is what I'm finding. It's like, and Amy and I will sometimes get in some conversation. She's like, where'd your memory go? And I'm like, it's not that I don't remember it. It just doesn't exist anymore. This is what's happening right now. But then you have to realize that, yes, this is everything in this moment right now, but there's going to be a next moment and a next moment and a next moment. And I think it's all really, this is the wake up process. This is the sleeping phoenix, I think, coming in. And yeah, so that's a pretty big theme these days, I think. And I don't know if other people are relating to it that way, but that's how it's coming up for me.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I feel like I've had the same experience recently where I'm like, I'm just so in the now of what's happening, even though my mind tries to is still trying to kind of calculate, the future and figure things out. But I feel like more and more I'm like, I don't know, I forgot, or oh yeah, what's this? I'm just so focused on what's happening right now. Yeah, but I feel like that too. Where's my memory? What happened to all this stuff that's in my head? That's funny. Well, John, Amy, thank you so much for coming on. What a awesome conversation. I love where it went. I'll have to have you guys back on. And John, I know I had wanted to touch on maybe some more philosophical things with Gurdjieff. I know you're a big student of the Fourth Way. Maybe I'll have you on and we can just geek out together on the more philosophical stuff. That would be fun if you're up for it. Where if people wanted to find out more, if they wanted to follow you guys, do you guys have anything coming up that people can get involved with? Yeah.
In the new year, we'll be offering foundation courses. So for anybody who is interested in studying, we do the Living Your Design, Rave ABCs, Rave Cartography. We both have private practices, so you can find us at humandesigncollective.com. There's a lot of information there. There are links to our teaching sites and to our individual sites. We'll be offering sessions and workshops in the new year. We'll be having some new longer programs starting in the new year as well. So yeah, for anybody who's interested, feel free to reach out. Go to humandesigncollective.com.
Awesome. And then just one last question for each of you. Super easy. What's the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? Just
what was it in Hitchhiker's Guide? Was it?
Yeah, the Hitchhiker's Guide. That's 42. Yeah, that's the answer.
42
in the movie.
Right.
But if you could give just one succinct, what would you say meaning of life? If you had something to say.
Remember.
I like that.
Remember.
That's a big one.
Like that.
Yeah.
That's coming from a mental projector. That's remember.
I go a little bit into, I guess you would call it a cosmology or kind of more of a abstract theoretical framework. But I really think about just this movement from basically chaos to order, and we see that in the 360. This kind of this process of reducing entropy and moving into greater order while we reconnect with source in a way. I think, however we want to hold the origin story, Big Bang, or, there's a separation of sorts. And I think maybe what Amy's referring to is this remembering what we are and where we come from and our relationship to it. And that to me seems like a process of coming into our own, as like you said earlier, like we are these nodes of consciousness, but we've been separated. And I think we're moving back. I think we're heading back to source and on some level. And that looks like this ancient polarity and dynamic between order and chaos.
Beautiful. I love that. That's so good. All right, you guys, we'll have a beautiful rest of your day. Thanks for coming on, and we'll be in touch.
It's great. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.